All right, everybody, welcome to the Horn Takes podcast, your Texas football and baseball talk destination. That's right, folks. I've given up on basketball. Not that the basketball team has done nothing to me. I'm just not as interested in basketball as I am football and baseball. So I'm going to stay true to my roots. We're going to stick with football. We're going to stick with baseball. It is Longhorn Friday Eve, and that is a beautiful thing for us. So many reasons. Longhorn Friday means we got a football game the next day. Friday in general means I get to go have Tex-Mex and margaritas, which is something that I just absolutely have to have in my life. Every week, I got to have Tex-Mex and margaritas at least once. It's the start of the weekend, man. We're going to have great weather here. We will definitely be hanging out in the swimming pool, watching football all day Saturday, cooking out on the grill and whatnot. Hope you guys have a wonderful weekend outside of just watching some college football, which I know all the guys listening to this, guys and gals, just absolutely love to do. Today's show, we'll do Trace Otra games. Going to pick 3 games like we always do. We're 3-0 last week, so we're 3-0 on the season. We'll do a deep dive into UTSA, talk a little bit about them, do a little preview on the UTSA Roadrunners. And then we'll have a segment called Great Expectations. It's a new segment. I'm going to do it every week. I'm going to talk about what I'm expecting out of the team this weekend for the upcoming game. Check us out on Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube at Horn Takes. If you just like to listen to podcasts, maybe you travel, maybe you deliver FedEx packages, Amazon packages, maybe you just are an Uber driver, you ride around all the time. It doesn't matter. If you can't get to the internet, you shouldn't be watching videos. You should definitely be checking out our podcast at Apple Podcast, iHeart Podcast, Spotify. All of those places don't work for you. That's all right. I got help for you. horntakespodcast.buzzsprout.com will get you to all of the episodes of the podcast. You know what I'm going to do? Next show, I'm going to actually put that email address up on the screen. That would be helpful, I bet. Maybe not for y'all that don't watch those. See, that's the rub. That's the rub. Trace Otra games, week 2, week 3. It's our week 2, but it's week 3. Kind of an okay slate of games. I mean, there's nothing, I guess, huge that pops off the plate at you, pops off the table at you. But I think there's 3 pretty decent games to pick. And actually, I think there's more. I just am never going to pick more than 3 because it's called Trace Otra games. First Trace Otra game in number 20, Arizona at number 14, K-State. This is a 7 p.m. kick tomorrow night on Fox. K-State, last time I checked, 7.5-point favorite at home. This is the first Big 12 matchup in the new look Big 12. So I think there's a lot of probably excitement around. I think a lot of people will watch this. I think it was very strategic putting this game on at Friday night when people aren't consumed with other games. I'm looking forward to this one. I typically do not get to watch Arizona play all that much because they've been in the Pac-12 and I'm way in bed generally, or just drunk. Sean is way too drunk to try to watch any more football by the time a lot of these Pac-12 games used to go off. So I'm excited about this one. Both teams 2-0. I think only K-State's been tested. That was by Tulane. And last year, Tulane was a really good team. I don't know much about Tulane. I'm assuming they probably lost some guys off that team. Generally, when the non-Power 5 teams have a really good season, it's because they have a lot of veterans and those veterans leave. So I don't know the whole story behind Tulane, but I know they tested K-State pretty well. Both defenses are pretty similar, at least statistically. They both give up just over 300 yards per game. Arizona likes to pass the ball. K-State likes to run the ball. They got a good running QB in Avery. Both of these teams, I feel like, are going to score some points. But I think K-State at home at night is really tough for anybody to overcome. I think it's going to be really tough for Arizona to overcome, but I think they'll keep it close. I got K-State in this game 34-27. K-State 34-27 over Arizona in Trace Otra game number 1. Trace Otra game number 2, and this one, you got to pick this one. Texas A&M Aggies at the Florida Gators. That's a 2:30 p.m. kick, and all these times are central, by the way. That's on Saturday. It's on ABC and ESPN Plus. A&M going into the Swamp as a 4-point favorite. I think that just shows how down Florida football is right now. If you'd be hard pressed to find another year, maybe outside of the last few, where a Texas A&M team that just doesn't have a lot of hype around it. It did not look. They did not look very good in their first game against Notre Dame, who since we have seen is an absolute fraud. So I wonder about A&M, but a team like this Aggie team would not go into the Swamp very often to be a 4-point favorite. So I think that just sort of highlights just how bad this Florida team is this year. Both squads are 1-1 after dropping game one against ranked out of conference opponents. In the battle of that, A&M won because they just barely got beat by Notre Dame. Miami went into the Swamp and just absolutely drug Florida up and down the field in their own house for 60 minutes. I think this is a must win for both of these teams. And I think the reason is one, you never want to start conference play 0-1. It's just a bad look. Two, all the negatives surrounding, especially Florida. I mean, we know that A&M is rebuilding. They got a new coach, all new coaching staff, a lot of new players. They're sort of in a they're sort of in a small rebuilding mode, right? They lost all of, I mean, not all of them, but most of those guys off of that really record breaking recruiting class, and the roster a couple years ago was really good. It is not the same roster. They've lost a lot of guys, but they're still, they're early in the rebuild. Now Florida's been in it for a while, and if you're Florida, I really think you got to win this game because your opponent is so vulnerable. And this really goes for both teams. Both A&M and Florida are very vulnerable right now. So this is like the time to strike and get yourself an SEC win early in the season. And then who knows what can happen after that. But you look at either one of these teams' schedules, not a lot of easy pickings. So for both squads, and I really feel like if you were to measure it, Florida needs this one really bad for a lot of reasons. All the reasons we just said, but also if you're Billy Napier, like you're on the verge of getting fired, and let A&M come in there and embarrass you in the Swamp, man. And I think the drum beat just gets louder and louder and louder and louder to get him out of Gainesville. Sometimes you got to do necessary things. Sometimes there's a lot of pain involved in doing those things. But I feel like in college football, especially, the threshold, the appetite for pain by these large athletic departments is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. They are not interested anymore in, yeah, let's hire the right guy, let's give him 5 years, and let's reevaluate. Like if it doesn't start to happen pretty quickly, these guys get on the hot seat quick. Both of these teams have looked completely inept offensively in their losses, but they looked okay against the two scrub teams they played, Samford and McNeese State, respectively. Florida with a big win over Samford, A&M with a big win over McNeese. It's hard to tell. I mean, I think you got to go with the games they've played against ranked opponents, where neither one of them look really good at all. So Florida, I think, has the edge offensively, at least statistically. The problem is they got two quarterbacks. I think Aggie has the edge defensively, at least statistically. And if you really look at it, they've got a really good D line. They can stop the run. They can get pressure on those Florida quarterbacks. The QB situation, A&M's got one, Florida's got two, and you know what they say: if you got two quarterbacks, you ain't got a quarterback. I like Aggie to go in there and win this one. I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be a comedy of errors. I really feel like I'm trying to think about who this game could remind us of. Just two not really good programs right now, battling it out just to see who can make the least amount of mistakes and do the least amount of dumb shit to get out of there with a win. And I think A&M will get it done. I think they'll win this one 26-20. So 26 for Aggie, 20 for Florida in the swamp. Trace Otra game number 2. Trace Otra game number 3, we got number 25 Boston College at number 6 Mizzou. And folks, I hesitated to pull this game, man, just because I do not think it's going to be that good of a game. But it's 2 ranked opponents, and I always try to do 2 ranked opponents if they're there. A lot of times early in the season, it's hard to find that one. The TV thinks so less of this game. A ranked how many times have you seen a ranked matchup be on the SEC network or the Big Ten network or the Longhorn network when that was a thing? This one is on the SEC network at 11:45 a.m. Central Time on Saturday. Mizzou a 17-point favorite in this one at home. Both squads are 2-0. I think Boston College has the better win. They won a 28-13 game over Florida State, and I mean, I don't know if that's a better win than some of the other wins, but it probably is. I mean, Florida State certainly has a better roster than anybody that Missouri has played to this point. They've played a bunch of high school teams. I don't even want to say the names of the teams they've played. I'm not going to do it. They haven't given up a point defensively. They're averaging like almost 45 points a game offensively. I think this is a really tough draw for Boston College. I think they're going to need to get a lot of pressure on Missouri's quarterback early, often, all day long to try to slow down that passing attack. I think they're going to have to score some early points to even have a chance in this game. Missouri, to me, they're living off of a bowl win against a really depleted Ohio State squad last year. I don't think that win was as big as probably 99% of the college football world does. It was not even a wasn't a shell of the Ohio State team that played most of the season. But I do think they're good. I'm not trying to say Missouri's a bad team. I just don't. They're not. I just think they are not a number 6 team in the country. We'll find out. I mean, I think this is a good early barometer litmus test for Missouri. They're better up and down the roster than Boston College, that's for sure. I think Missouri's going to win this one like 38-20, 38-17, something like that. It's never going to be in doubt. It's not going to be completely ugly, I don't think, but that is pretty ugly. So there it is, Trace Ocher games, final one, game 3, Missouri 38, Boston College 20. Let's jump into UTSA Roadrunners deep dive. Jeff Traylor's bringing his Roadrunners into DKR with a 1-1 record on Saturday. They had a 28-16 win over Division I AA Kennesaw State in week 1, and they just got an absolute ass kicking at the hands of Jeff Traylor's protege, G.J. Kinney, and those Texas State Bobcats, 49-10. I don't know how many of y'all know this. Jeff Traylor was the coach at Gilmer when G.J. Kinney was at Gilmer. I'm almost positive. You know what? Maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe Kinney's dad was the coach. I know Jeff Traylor was at Gilmer. I just don't know if they were there at the same time. So maybe my protege thing is off. Should have checked that. Nonetheless, G.J. Kinney goes to Texas, and then he transfers to Tulsa, maybe? I think it was Tulsa. Some school like that to finish out his career. And now he's got those Texas State Bobcats, man. They had pretty sure they won a bowl last year, which is something I don't think a lot of Texas State fans imagined at the D1 level. I'm going to check that deal, and I'll get back to y'all. I feel like Kenny's dad was the coach when he was the quarterback at Gilmer. Anyway, this UTSA team was 9-4 in 2023, 7-1 in the American Athletic Conference. Their only loss last year was a really close one to Tulane. Like we said, that was a good Tulane team. They beat USC in the Cotton Bowl. That was in the championship game, and it was a close game. But I think this is somewhat of a rebuild for UTSA. Offensively, they lost a ton from the team last year. QB Frank Harris, that dude seemed like he was there for 873 years. He's gone. They're now led by, well, they got two quarterback system, but really one guy looks like he's doing the heavy lifting. Led by a Colorado transfer, Owen McCown. Their top two wide receivers off the team last year, Joshua Cephas and Tyke Ogle Kellogg, gone. It's Willie McCoy and Devin McEwen in 2024 are the leading pass catchers so far. The O-line was banged up a whole lot last year. Some of it's back, some of it's not. They got some transfers in. They need some repatching, some gelling. They need some flex seal to keep them together. Most of this team's yardage comes through the air. They're averaging 296 yards per game through the air. They only manage 87 yards per game on the ground, only scoring 19 points per game. So far this season, through two games, they've turned the ball over 3 times, one pick, 2 fumbles. They are 10 for 33 on third down, 3 for 6 on fourth down. There's one that's really bad for them, though. They've given up 7 sacks through 2 games, and they have played like, I mean, Texas State, I think, probably has a good team. Kennesaw State, uh, we don't even need to talk about it. So I think UTSA's offensive line might be in for a world of hurt on Saturday. Defensively, they lost their best player to the portal in defensive end Trey Moore, who is now getting an opportunity to battle against his old teammates on Saturday. He is now a Texas Longhorn. I think the front four, they get pretty decent pressure on the QB. They have 4 sacks already this season. I think the linebacker unit is pretty solid. They're experienced. They've been around there a while. The secondary should look a lot better this year with the addition of 5-star transfer Denver Harris at quarterback. That is a guy that was at A&M, then he was at LSU. Just never, I think he was part of A&M's record-setting, amazing recruiting class. But he never could act right there. He never could act right at LSU. You never hope for those guys to continue that behavior. You always hope that they'll snap out of it somehow and figure it out. I just hate to see guys with the opportunity that some of these guys have just piss it right down the drain. It makes no sense to me. It's one of the most aggravating things about being a college football fan. This UTSA defense is worst in the country, or it's one of the worst in the country. It's not worst. It is one of the worst in the country. They give up 255 yards per game through the air. They're giving up 123 yards per game on the ground, and that's probably because nobody even wants to try to run it on them because they can just pass it all over them. They're one of the worst in the country, giving up 32.5 points per game. They've only got 1 pick so far in 2024, no other turnovers. Their opponents are 10 for 29 on third down. They're 2 for 5 on fourth down. Generally speaking, if you were Jeff Traylor, this is not the type of team you want to bring into Darrell K. Royal on Saturday and face the Texas Longhorn team that just got back from Ann Arbor after delivering a 31-12 ass kicking to Michigan. I mean, I think the only hope that UTSA has in this game is for Texas to just completely overlook them, and I just don't think that's going to happen. I think Steve Sarkisian is a smart guy. He learned from one of the best at how to talk to his team through the media, and almost immediately upon getting back from Michigan, he starts talking about 60 minutes of hell. He starts talking about, sort of alluding to the fact that the team did not finish that game up in Michigan the way that team is capable of finishing the game. And he certainly does not want this team to overlook anybody as they get through this schedule. It's going to get to the point on this schedule where you can't overlook anybody. Right now, you probably can and get away with it, but I don't think that's what Steve Sarkisian wants this team to do. So there's a quick rundown of UTSA. Yikes for them, honestly. Great expectations. Earlier in the week, we just talked about it. 60 minutes of hell. This was in reference to, in my opinion, like a really low intensity second half up in Ann Arbor. Certainly less intense than the first half. So what I'm looking for out of this team on Saturday, I want them to come out and have a really fast start. Like we have seen in the Steve Sarkisian era, and that's all I want to talk about because he's the head coach right now, and the coaching staff is pretty much the same coaching staff that's been here since the beginning. We've seen this team come out slow against teams that really shouldn't even stand a chance at being on the field with them. They've sort of played down to the level of competition in a lot of cases and played really slow early on. It's taken them a while to wake up. And once they do, they generally explode. But you'd like to see them come out Saturday. I would like to see them come out Saturday and just have a really quick start. Just like underdogs are looking for any little thing they can hold on to make them think they got a chance. And as long as they have that little thing in their hands, they're going to think they have a chance. And as long as people think they have a chance, especially when you're talking about competitors, like you're talking about in D1 football, you never know what the hell's going to happen. Nobody on the planet thought Appalachian State was going to go into Texas A&M and beat them the way they did. Nobody. But you know who did? Appalachian State. They thought they could do it. They had those things in their hands, those shreds of hope. And A&M didn't take them out of their hands quick enough or often enough. And they ended up messing around and getting beat by a team that should have had no business to getting in there and beating them. So you never want to do that. I think really great teams find a way to consistently start fast and just put the thing in doubt right from the beginning, no matter who they're playing. I want to see this team play with intensity in all three phases of the game for 4 quarters. I don't know if we've seen a Steve Sarkisian team do that yet. And I don't mean that I don't want to be overly critical about that because some of these games where they've let off the gas a lot, the leads have been so big that, I think just human nature, it's just really hard to stay focused and stay that intense when you're beating somebody, 41-9 or something like that. That being said, I think games, especially these games against lower talented teams, lesser talented teams, I think they're just practices for games in the future on the schedule. So I think this Texas team needs to go out and practice on Saturday for the way they'll have to play to beat the Georgias, the Ohio States, the Bamas, etc. of the college football world. Go out there. The starters aren't going to play probably for 4 quarters. I would expect Quinn Ewers maybe a drive or 2 in the second half. Then after that, the second teamer is going to go in. And I know those guys are going to play hard because they don't get to play that much. But there'll be starters sprinkled in throughout that second half. I want those guys to play 4 quarters of football in all 3 phases one time. I think Texas will clearly have the better roster. They clearly have the better coaching staff. What we don't know and what the question is will they have the most intensity for the entirety of that game? That's what we're looking for. That's our great expectations for Saturday. We'll do this every week. We'll talk about it. We will be back on Friday, tomorrow. We will have 4 keys and a prediction for this game. And we'll find something else to talk about, I'm sure. Find us on Twitter and TikTok and YouTube at Horn Takes. Give us a subscribe. Give us a follow. Will not cost you guys a thing. But I know we appreciate the support. You can email me at horntakespodcast@gmail.com with all your questions, comments, concerns, and criticisms. I love them all. You guys get ready for the weekend. It's almost here. You guys have a good weekend, and I'll tell you that again tomorrow. Have a good Friday Eve. I'm sure there's a football game on tonight. Enjoy it. You guys get hooked.